Hey, good morning, Liberty North, AP Psych. It is Tuesday, April 21st. Again, starting and kind of in the beginning of week 5 of virtual learning. So we are starting, today's a mile mark, April 21st, we're starting our last unit, our last chapter really, in AP and dual credit psychology at Liberty North High School. So today we're going to start chapter 16 and 17, which are psych disorders and treatments. We'll put those all together as one chapter, and this is it. So seniors, you have less than a month to go. Obviously, I think they're still keeping your date as the 14th or 12th. And the rest of us have just about a month left. We're going to end on May 22nd. So believe me, this type of format, I think it's going to go pretty fast. So so again, just remember the only thing from chapter 18 is your lab, and I have plenty of people starting to turn those in already. And then I have the assignments ready to go for this chapter, which I'll publish probably today or tomorrow. This will be it. Okay, so definitely not the way I wanted to end the semester or my year with you guys, because again, you guys, I have great students. I have amazing students, and I miss you guys and being in the class and just interacting and seeing you guys. So hopefully come May, there'll be some events that we can see each other and just kind of catch up briefly before you move on to college, which will be a great experience as well. So if you want to get out your notes, again, with these two chapters, what we'll do is we'll go back to the method. I'm not going to list them by specific AP learning target. I'm just going to kind of give you the notes and the information and work through it with you. And then you need to be able to answer your learning targets. I do have, if you look on the thumbnail, here are your learning targets, and they are on Canvas. Again, under the class learning targets, they're down at the bottom. So this is the last one. Okay, and this does combine chapter 16 and 17 together, which is why we'll treat it as one chapter. So it's basically psych disorders and treatments. Okay, there are 17 learning targets. I should put on there like chapter 16 and chapter 17. It's probably what I should do if that helps. I'll do that as well. And the first 10 are from chapter 16, and then the last 7 are from chapter 17. Okay, so I'll do that though. I'll make those changes on there on Canvas. Okay. All right. So just some intro stuff. So just there's some generic AP learning targets just about psych disorders as a whole that I'm just going to go over today. And then what we'll do starting tomorrow is we'll cover a group of disorders, and you'll be completing a psych disorder chart, which will be your lab actually. So for your lab for 16 and 17 are going to be very simple. They're just going to be just the way that you take notes. So we're going to have a psych disorder chart in which we list the disorder, the category, the symptoms, the causes, treatments. And then we're going to have a treatment chart, which is just 2 sides. We have psychotherapy and biomedical treatments. So your labs for both 16 and 17 are just going to be the charts, which we'll do in class, and we'll fill those out together as we go. I'll create the chart on the little paper diagram up here, and then we'll just fill it out together as we go. And then that's just a great thing to have. Again, I've had at least 3 students I know pass the MCAT with the behavioral health. So behavioral sciences, mental health is now a section if you're going to be a doctor, and they just use their charts that we did and so that they passed the section on the MCAT. So I just think it's a good way to organize it, keep it all together, access it, understand it, and then kind of see how it all works together with the DSM-5. Okay. All right. So again, abnormal psychology, I believe, I haven't checked yet. I'll make sure I look, but generally it's one of the top 3 college elective courses taken in all of America. So it's very, very popular. It's an amazing class. It can be called psychopathology, psych disorders, which is its normal name, or abnormal psychology. And I still have several of those books back in my classroom. There are textbooks from abnormal psychology classes kind of around the country. So it kind of has synonymous terms. but the most popular, probably the most used, is psych disorders, which is what the topic is in our book. Now, the medical term is psychopathology, okay, which is sickness or illness of the mind, right? So this is kind of the scientific or medical study of the origin, symptoms, and development of psych disorders, okay? All right. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about, which I don't think the medical community, well, I know the medical community is not in agreement on, or not in unison about this, but what is the difference between psych disorders and mental illness? Okay. And I'm going to use just a simple explanation that I have read about. I've also had it shared with me. If you just look at the words that I have underlined here, illness versus disorder, okay? Psych disorders are much more serious, okay? They're if I am disordered, which we'll talk about down here, you know, I am struggling to stay in life, to function in life. And then generally I'm going to be dealing with the disorder for the entirety of my life. So, you know, you kind of have psych disorders, which are kind of the highest form of illness and dysfunction that you can have in psychology, okay? So when I'm talking psych disorders, obviously there's specific diagnostic criteria, but I am talking about a pervasive, ongoing, dysfunctional illness that affects my mind, okay? Mental illness could be short term. Most of the time, now I could deal with a great example here. So I have an anxiety disorder, and I can also just be diagnosed with anxiety. Okay, so anxiety would be the mental illness, right? So I can deal with anxiety, and I can even see a psychiatrist. I can even be on medication, but I just have anxiety because I don't fit the diagnostic criteria for having a disorder, which basically means that it doesn't impact my life as much as it could. And hopefully I'm just dealing with it in the short term and not for the rest of my life. However, people can be treated with anxiety and depression, you know, for years, but still not meet the criteria for a mood, depressive disorder, or an anxiety disorder, okay? So, you know, the main difference is the impact on living and functioning, really, and kind of the length of time, okay? So, you know, illness generally means that my mind is sick, okay, which our mind is an organ and it can get sick. This is that it's kind of mildly sick, although it doesn't feel mild, but compared to this, it is, okay? Again, much more effect on social functioning, day-to-day living. It's longer, it's pervasive, okay? And here, I have good days and I have really bad days, but I'm still able to pretty much go to school, to function, to get a job. And generally the medication and stuff works and helps keep me there. And here, these people just struggle with a serious, you know, disorder for their most likely the entirety of their life. And hopefully, you know, they can manage it to where they can still participate and be in life. And some disorders allow that a little bit more than others, okay? So probably I would say seriousness is the difference, the length of time, okay? And then the big thing would be this one just really kind of impacts your day-to-day living and functioning a lot more than this would be, okay? Like I know some of you are being treated for anxiety and depression, and you're still able to go to school. It's not, you know, and you're in therapy, you're on medication. Some days are just really rough, okay? But overall, you're still able to kind of keep it together and function. Here, that just is at a whole different level, okay? It's at a whole different level, okay? Right? All right. So another term that is often used is abnormal behavior, which sometimes in the class it's called abnormal psychology, okay? So with abnormal, we're going to use the term disordered as well, okay? So in psychology and the medical community, we use disordered, which is where you get psych disorders, okay? Or my mind is disordered, okay? And disordered means much more serious. And basically, I've got the three reds here. Generally in psychology, disordered means that it deviates, it's distressful, and it's dysfunctional, okay? All right? So let's go through these. So kind of the requirements for disordered behavior, abnormal behavior, okay, which again would put this in its own category, psych disorders, is it deviates from the social norm, okay? Again, we do have to look at society and culture when we look at deviant behavior and what's abnormal, because that does differ per cultures. There's some very what we would call abnormal behavior. I have a magazine that I show, and there's certain cultures who do ancestral worship, and there's certain Latin American cultures that actually, at the anniversary of one of their loved ones' death, they'll dig up the body and they'll put clothes on it and they'll parade it through the town, kind of like celebrating it. That's, number one, digging up a body is illegal in America. You can't do that. So, there's a big difference. There's also cultures that actually promote cannibalism. As a part of their ancestral worship, they eat the dead. You don't eat dead people in America. Okay, we don't do that. That's illegal. So, and that would put you up over here, where in those cultures it would be normal. So, again, this is very much culturally driven. Okay, so does it deviate from the cultural standard and set social norm? Okay, is it maladaptive? Which maladaptive basically means they refuse to change. Okay, and that's another kind of difference here. If I have anxiety, hopefully I'm getting to a point to where I'm trying to change. I realize that thoughts hurt me and I need to change my thoughts. These people generally know that, but they just don't really attempt to change. Just change is not, it's just tough for them to do. Okay. And then personal distress. So it causes distress. It causes me personal pain. Again, mainly socially, because I struggle to interact with other people. And it causes me pain because I can't function and live like other people. Okay. Self-defeating, that's kind of another term for it. It defeats behavior, and it basically causes me pain. And the last one is dysfunctional. So it impacts every area of my life. It makes it very, very difficult to function. Okay. So to hold a job, to have friends, to go on vacations, stuff like that. It just makes that type of living, normal living, very, very difficult. Okay. So if we can summarize this, disordered behavior means deviates. Deviates, it's distressful, and then it's dysfunctional. Okay. All right. And again, we're dealing with the mind on all of this. Okay. So again, I think it's very important that we need to get rid of the stereotype again that, if I'm depressed, I just need to start thinking happier thoughts and stuff like that. That again, we talked about that in class over and over. The mind gets sick. It's just like any other organ in your body. It can become sick. It can stop working the way it is. It can get out of a normal rhythm. It can be short or have deficits in neurotransmitters. It can have surpluses in neurotransmitters. It can lose that balance because of environmental, genetic, biological causes, any of those. But I think we take for granted how perfectly our mind works when we feel normal, and that it just actually can stop doing that for a while. So keep that in mind as we're talking about all this. Okay. You need to know your DSM-5. Okay. I think that's the first. I think that might be learning target number 1 right there. I think is. Yeah. So learning target number 1 is what do we use to diagnose psych disorders? And that is the DSM-5, Diagnostic Statistical Manual. Okay, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is on your learning targets. Number 5, okay, 5th revision. And I forgot that they did go away from the Roman numerals because of insurance. So everything before that, the 1, 2, 3, and 4 were in Roman numerals, but this one is not. Okay, and this is our manual that the clinical field uses to classify and diagnose disorders. Now, it's very important that you know that it does not prescribe a treatment. It's only used for classifying and diagnosing disorders. So for me, again, the difference between, I used anxiety before. The difference between anxiety and anxiety disorder is what the DSM-5 tells me is the difference. Okay, and it lists, it categorizes all the disorders, classifies them, and actually lists the exact symptoms you have to have, how long you have to have them, how prevalent they have to be, how much dysfunction they have to cause, that type of thing. So again, early on at the beginning of mental health, and psych disorders. You could go to 5, 7 psychiatrists to get 7 different disorders. So in the 1950s, when the first DSM was created, the idea was to everybody's diagnosing with a universal manual so that we don't get that. So I should now go to 5 different psychiatrists or psychologists and get diagnosed with the same disorder based on the criteria that's listed. Okay. So we'll talk about panic attacks tomorrow with anxiety disorders. So one of the stipulations for an anxiety disorder is I have to have a panic attack. Now, it doesn't mean that I can be treated for anxiety because I do have panic attacks. That's just one part of it. Okay. But that has to be there. Okay. But then to have a panic attack, you have to have 4 required symptoms out of 12. They start and peak within 10 minutes. It gets very, very specific about what you need to have and how long you need to have it. So that's how we used to diagnose disorders. Okay. Mental illness, you can kind of basically, if you go to your primary care physician, they might give you a survey. Usually they're from Beck, actually. Beck's depressive survey inventory, his anxiety inventory, and they're going to see if you have those symptoms. And if you said, well, I have a panic attack, and you're describing physical symptoms of the anxiety, they're probably going to okay medication, give it to you. And then if it becomes pervasive, it really begins to grow and kind of overtake you, then you might go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist and see if you fit the criteria for a disorder. Okay. Now, with that, I also want to say that, in these disorders, we're all going to have symptoms of them. Okay. Like we throw around words like obsessive, compulsive, I'm a germaphobe, and stuff like that. Those are culturally loaded and used terms. But again, they don't fit the criteria for here because it's not as pervasive. It's not dysfunctional, distressful, and doesn't deviate from the norm. Okay. All right. Then also we have another criteria, which we'll do on our chart, which is psychotic versus neurotic. Okay. This is another term that we kind of throw around in culture. This one you should know because of the personality inventories that we have taken. So, this is a part of the big 5. Unstable, but basically the big 5 gives you a dimension of neuroticism that we all have. Okay. So psychotic is the more serious, obviously, disorders. And those are disorders in which I break from reality. Okay. So I split. I'm no longer functioning in reality. All right. So schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders is now the category in the DSM-5. Okay, and so we have a group of disorders in which I do break from reality and become psychotic, okay, or go through psychosis, right? Neurotic basically means that I just have an abnormal level of fear and anxiousness, okay? So according to the big 5, we've become an anxious society. We really have, and in America, I think they refer to it as the age of anxiety, okay? So it's kind of becoming the social norm for you to be anxious. And that's indicated by this is in one of our leading personality inventories, the big 5. Okay. So just abnormal level of fear and anxiety. And this would be breaking from reality. Okay. Okay. All right. And then last one is one of the learning targets is basically just cultural terms, how psychology and the medical community differ from the law community. Okay, and one great example is you probably have heard of criminal insanity or the insanity plea. Now, it's very important to know that insane and insanity is not in the DSM-5, and it's not really a psychological term. It's a government law-created term, okay? And the term means that you don't know right from wrong. You can't tell right from wrong, okay? So again, immediately, if I have a psychological disorder, it does not mean that I can plead. Well, I can plead insanity, but it doesn't mean that it's going to work. I have to prove that my disordered mind, my sick mind, keeps me from knowing right from wrong, which can happen in psychosis, but not all the time and not really. And again, most of the time, it's like 1% of people who have disorders are dangerous, most likely to themselves, but to other people. Okay, but we do have a lot of people who try to plead insanity if they do have like a personality disorder or some type of psychotic disorder. A good example is if we go back to the Kitty Genovese case, she was murdered by Winston Moseley. And he definitely was disordered. He had a disorder. I think antisocial personality disorder, I think is what they finally ended on with him. But he had broken from reality. So maybe a psychopath. However, he pleaded insanity and lost actually very quickly, because they knew that in the first attack, when he attacked Kitty Genevieve's, when somebody up in one of the windows laid, "Hey, what's going on down there?" He got up and left, which shows, number one, that he knows what he was doing was wrong. And number two, then he actually put on a coat and put on a hat. He changed his appearance when he went back the second time to attack her. So there were definitely instances in that case where he communicated by his behavior that he knew what he was doing was wrong. So at that point, it doesn't matter what disorder you have or what diagnosis you have, right from wrong. Okay. And that's so insanity is for people. And again, it's very rarely actually accommodated or won in the law system, is when, your illness, and it could be a neurological disorder, which are involved in psych disorders as well. But if your illness in your mind prevents you from knowing right from wrong, and that's very rare that actually happens. But I think it's glorified in the movies and things like that. But that's the definition of insanity, which is a government term, okay, cultural term for law purposes, but it does not fit in here. Okay, so we're not going to say with each disorder you're insane or sane. Okay, that's not what we do in psychology. You're sane, period, most of the time, and in all of these disorders. It's very rarely that you actually you're so lost with reality that you don't know right from wrong. Okay. Okay. All right. Any questions on that? That's just the beginning stuff that will get us going. And I think mainly that all covers really kind of learning targets 1 to 5, pretty much. You'll have pretty much hold on to this, and you'll be able to transfer it over. Or if you read the beginning of your book or read the beginning of the online text, you'll get all that kind of intro stuff, which are kind of learning targets 1 to 4. Okay. Caroline, do we have to do vocab for 16 and 17? Yes, you do. 16 and 17 are your last vocab, and there's actually not that many. I think 17 is really short. And actually, you should be able to get it all from the chart on 17. 17 should be very, very simple to do. But yeah, 16 and 17 are your last 2 vocab. Just everything's the last. So good question. And the charts will knock out most of those vocab. So I'll take a picture of the vocab again for 16 and 17 and stick them on Canvas again once I get the assignment posted. And then your AP notebook should be done. Ready to turn in on May 4th. Caroline, I love it that you always keep me, and your questions always keep me on track with all the assignments, because I appreciate you very much. And also appreciated having you first hour, because you always set the pace for the rest of the day and making sure that I had the right announcements. So yes, so make sure that I have all that correct. See a lot of people jumping off, so I think we're good. Okay. All right, so tomorrow we'll start with anxiety disorders, and we'll just go down. I'll go in order of the book, but then I'll just go down in order of categories in the DSM-5. Okay. All right. Have a good Tuesday.